Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the live event um, where we will talk about how to move to Jira Cloud in phases with minimal downtime and surprises. While we wait for other people to join in, just give them a couple of more minutes. I would appreciate if you share your name, drop your name in the chat, where you're from, where you're joining in from tonight. I don't know, your location. If you want to share, you can also share what your role is at your company at the moment. If you're a tech admin or solution partner, or I don't know, a product manager, it would be cool to see the mix of folks who are here. And meanwhile, we would also like to know what is your current stage when moving to Jira Cloud, or what is your current status. Matze, you can maybe run this poll, um, just so we have a fair or a little bit of idea of what we are dealing with tonight. So if you are just starting off, or you don't have a plan, but you want to learn more about it, or maybe you're already running a migration, or maybe you're already done with the migration, and that would be cool as well. And maybe you can give us some tips as well at the end. Bubbles note taker says, I'm taking notes and action. Okay, so apparently we have some bots in here as well. That's cool. It's fine. So we are seeing some results already in there. It's a fair mix apparently. Maybe we can end the poll and share the results quickly before we jump into the slides. Right. So a fair mix, as I said. Some people are just starting off their migration journey. Some have a plan already, and some are actually running it. And there's one person who has already moved to cloud. So I'd like to hear what your experience has been so far, and what you gain out of this webinar. Hope it's something useful. You can stop sharing, and then we move to the gist of it. Just before I move to agenda, quick introduction. My name is Omar. I am the product marketing manager at K15T, specifically for Backbone Worksing for Jira. And with me is my colleague, Matthias Geiser, or Matze, as we lovingly call him. And he's an absolute veteran in the ecosystem. Matze, you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
Sure, I can do so. Yeah, happy to have you here today. I'm Matze. I'm like working in company data exchange for over 15 years now or so. And so for it's more about how to get data from one place to the other one. And I'm happy to share some knowledge in this regard as well today.
Perfect. Glad to have you here. Quick agenda recap for tonight. So we'll start off with a warning on, okay, it's time to migrate. Everybody knows it, but still a little bit of a timeline of what exactly Atlassian has announced recently, followed up by some of the migration strategies. In particular, we'll focus on the optimize and shift and phased migration strategy, because that's, we think, are more relevant when you're trying to reduce the risk of loss of data or downtimes. And then I'll hand it over to Matze, who will give you a quick demo on how to actually start off with this migration journey, and then also include a couple of an app like Backbone Worksync, for example, to simplify and make sure you don't lose your data. And then we'll also have a Q&A session in case you have any questions by the end. So without further ado, end of DC is coming. Even Simpsons predicted it, so apparently it has to be true. And hopefully, unless you were completely cut off from civilization in the last year or so, in that case, I envy you, but it should not come as a shock that end of support is coming. End of DC support is around 28 March 2029. that's the rough timeline announced by Atlassian. So end of sales to new customers is March 2026. Pretty soon, actually, in a couple of months, I would say. Then end of sale to existing customers, it's March 2028. So no DC license can be bought anymore by anyone else. And then end of life, that means end of all kind of support as well, in March 2029, as I already mentioned. And you can also visit this link if you need more information on the general timeline, if there are any changes by Atlassian. And with that, obviously, you have to move to cloud. There is apparently no more option anymore. There is a question of Piyush. Okay, yeah, this will be recorded, and we will send it out afterwards to anyone who had signed up. So, just a general agenda for this session. We will walk you through all of the steps, or most of the steps at least, for migration. I quickly touch the assess and plan part, followed up by Matze, who will go deeper into preparation, testing, and migration strategy, and actually walk you through the steps there. So this, as I said, assessment part for end of life server, it was valid that, okay, you still have an option if you want to assess whether you want to move to cloud or not, but you don't have an option anymore. You kind of have to if you want to stick to Atlassian tools, but assessment is still very important if you want to really get a handle on what exactly is needed for your next cloud environment. So, for example, how many users are going to be moving to cloud? If there's some sort of fluff that you want to cut out, because it's going to impact your costs, the cost of your instance. And also, if you're moving with some apps or anything, then do you want to move with them, or do you want to, not use them anymore? But for assessment part, maybe it's interesting to actually know what exactly is your biggest priority, or let's say what's the biggest concern for you when you're moving to cloud. And while you're picking your strategy to move to cloud, is it, Matze, you can maybe run the poll as well. So is it minimizing the downtime? Or maybe making sure there's no data loss while you're moving from DC to cloud. I know there are some Jira admins in there as well. So there's a lot of admin work load that's added while moving this or doing the move. And then handling of complex configuration as well. That's also a concern, obviously, because it might be that you want to change your configurations from one instance to another, or it's just too many things to take a handle of. We are still seeing some scales moving, so I will give a couple more seconds. Yeah, I think maybe we can share. Yeah, we can share now, I guess. All right. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. 75% people want to make sure there's no data loss while moving. And then a lot of you are also concerned about downtime. And the complex configuration part is also interesting for a lot of people. That's kind of what I also saw. I did this poll in a couple of communities on LinkedIn as well. So Jira communities, very big ones, and got some results as well. It's kind of similar results. A lot of people are interested in making sure there's no data loss and downtime or minimizing it. So that checks out. And you are in the right session. Hopefully, we can guide you in that a little bit and make sure that you take away some tips and practical advice on how to ensure minimizing data loss and downtime. So before we move into the preparation and testing part, just a quick run through of the migration strategies that exist. Right. And so first up is, there are actually 4 of them that generally we know about, but the first one for most is the start fresh. as the name suggests, it's very evident that if you're confident, you won't be working with the majority of your existing DC projects data going forward, or you want to move to cloud right away, then you want to choose this start fresh approach and start setting up your cloud site. So as it's very obvious, no downtime, and there's no real migration needed, right? Because you're not moving anything. And then you can also take the liberty to redesign the processes, reinvent some of the processes, and eliminate some of the technical debt in there. But obviously, it's not practical for everyone because users won't have any access to the old data, so it's could be as good as gone. Everything is new in the new instance, so it's probably not practical for a lot of companies out there, and it also takes time to set up the new instance with new projects, new processes, and whatever. So in case this is our recommendation, if you do not need your data on your existing DC, or you're spinning up a new team, or you want to speed up your move to cloud, or maybe you want to just reshuffle and rethink the way you're working, then this is a good strategy. But for most companies, as I said, it might not be very practical. Then quickly moving on to the most popular one, I would say, and also recommended by Atlassian, is the lift and shift. So you essentially take all of your data, product data, users, and apps, and migrate it to cloud in a single downtime window. That's what it is. And the benefits there, obviously, you migrate all at once. So there's no confusion, there's no working in two systems. And the migration time, in essence, it really depends on the size of your instance, but it should be short. So not a lot of preparation needs to be done, which can lead to lower costs. So there's hopefully not a lot of partner costs and consultancy costs required. But there are big considerations to take care of when you're using this strategy, because all of the users have to be moved at the same downtime window and then onboarded, which is a big task, especially if you're an enterprise or bigger company. Getting them up to speed, it can be challenging, to say the least. There's also a lot of unnecessary data because you're not picking and choosing, or you're not cleaning up your data, you're just moving everything from DC to cloud. So it might be there's a higher risk of migration failure because data hasn't really optimized for cloud. And the post cleanup, because then once it's on cloud, then you kind of have to clean it up then. So it racks up the effort needed for the Jira admins and anyone else who is taking care of that migration for you. So we will go deeper into this, like how to actually do it on a high level with JCMA. That's like the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. But this is in principle how it works. So with JCMA, you can move your projects or an issue history, attachments and project assets, boards and sprints, other things like, I don't know, users, groups, and app data. If your marketplace app is also supports the JCMA migration. So it is very good in that it's very comprehensive. It helps you move everything. And with lift and shift, that's recommended if you really want to move to cloud really quickly and do not want to spend time and resources cleaning up or migrating. And of course, you have to check if you are using other third-party apps, then if they are available on cloud. If so, then this strategy checks out for you. Then something that's more relevant when you are looking to avoid data loss and downtime is maybe optimize and shift, one of the first migration strategies. This is essentially pretty similar to lift and shift, but in this case, what's different is you first optimize your DC instance before migration. So this way you make sure you only migrate the necessary data in users in a single downtime window to clean up your data a bit and optimize it as the name suggests. The benefits kind of similar as well. So you get to migrate at once. But this time there's no unnecessary data. And hopefully it's been optimized already for cloud. And hopefully it's also then easier for users because you've already optimized for cloud. Some of the considerations still, all users have to be simultaneously added. So they have to get onboarded and you have to maybe retrain them a bit. Well, and pre-cleanup will cost some time. So that's another concern. Another problem here could be that changing things and optimizing things on the live DC instance can get tricky here because people are already working on it. And while you're trying to change things before moving to cloud, this might influence your current DC usage, and people need to adapt to change on DC, and probably some need some further changes and adaptation on cloud. So it can get a little bit messy for them. So initially, you can again use JCMA for this strategy, the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. But again, as I mentioned, one of the problems is that you kind of have to pick and choose. You can't really pick and choose the issues and data you want to move, and you're gonna have to make changes on the fly on the live DC instance. Because JCMA essentially works on a project level, which means you can choose the projects to migrate and all of the data in it, but you really can't really granularly pick the issues, related configurations, and things like that for those particular projects. And so there's no inbuilt filtering for those specific kind of data. So like issue keys or issue types, date range, so on. You can't really filter through it. So that could be a little bit of a burden, I would say. So recommended a move using optimize and shift using JCMA is when you want to move to cloud in one migration window, and you have the time and resources and people and expertise to clean up the DC yourself or with other partner services. And again, if you're moving third-party apps, your apps are available. There's a better way to do this as well, or a different way which gives you a little bit more control, I would say, on type of data you want to move from DC to cloud, is using one of the apps referred to earlier, so Backbone WorkSync, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that after this, and how to actually set it up. But this essentially allows you to pick and choose the data and issues you want to move. So and we know like one of our very trusted partners, solution partners, is actually doing this for a customer as we speak. So it is being used, and so this is how it kind of differentiates if you want to use JCMA versus Backbone. So you can create your new instance on cloud and then use Backbone WorkSync to pick and choose and get the issues and work items over. And Backbone allows you to filter using a JQL query. So essentially you can filter through issue types or status or dates or labels or fields, and you only move what you need instead of entire projects, as in with JCMA. And you can map configuration differences, like, I don't know, change of values of custom fields or different workflows. So that's really solves JCMA's biggest limitation, and essentially means you don't really need to disrupt the workflow on DC while people are working on it, while you're kind of trying to delete data and pick and optimize it. You use Backbone to do that for you. And so essentially it means lesser downtime and hopefully no data loss or minimal data loss. That was optimize and shift. And then the star of the show, phase migration. We will touch that really briefly before Matse actually goes into the practical steps of how to do this. So if you don't want to migrate all your data using lift and shift or optimize and shift at once, so this is your go-to strategy. There's also the option to migrate the data in certain chunks in phases. That's how you do it with this strategy. So for example, you migrate your Jira instance project by project, or projects which belong closer to each other in one go. And then you leave the ones that you don't need right now, or maybe are more complex for later on. And in essence, this means that you are running DC and cloud instances in parallel as you move projects. what are the benefits? Obviously, you get a head start, a speedy start there, so it allows teams to start quicker. And then maybe you can also run kind of a EAP, like early access program or something like that. You get a lot of iterative feedback opportunities, so you can reuse this feedback. You can move a smaller project, see how it worked out, and then implement that knowledge and feedback for the bigger migrations. And at all users are needed to be onboarded. That's one of the biggest advantages here. So your users can continue working on DC while you move to data, and you can also move your users project by project so they get a hang of it with time and they are not rushed into it. Then they can move later as well. So as I mentioned earlier, you can move your complex projects a little bit later as well. You can delay it, and especially if there are third-party dependencies, or they can be migrated at a later time. And then migration team already has learned a lot by then, hopefully, so they can anticipate some of the banana peels and pitfalls. And then there's obviously lesser risk, as you could have already imagined. So if there's something that goes wrong due to limited scoping, or that means that you can stop and reassess and then continue your strategy afterwards. And hopefully that means there's lesser downtime and lesser risk of data loss for the whole instance. Some of the considerations, and that's why maybe Atlassian doesn't really recommend this strategy, but still it's worth looking into. We'll quickly go back to the previous slide. Okay, so yeah, you need some careful planning in there, because you have to pick and choose which project is more complex and which might need delaying when moving to DC, moving to cloud. There's again hybrid approach, a hybrid model. So using two environments or two instances parallel could get a little bit tricky, because and confusing for your users maybe, or admins as well if it's a big instance. And there's a risk of configuration drift as well. So while people are working on different instances, there's a chance that people are building up different type of processes, so it could get tricky in the long run. And that's where again backbone worksync fits in to the picture. So it allows you to run both instances in parallel and keep it in sync as well. So essentially, and also obviously you can pick and choose what kind of fields, work items, workflows you map from DC to cloud. And so all of the down or considerations or probable pitfalls for phase migration are kind of circumvented when you use backbone, because you don't have to jump around the two different instances, and all your users don't need to move to one project or another. They can just continue working their own instance, and backbone does the rest for you. And we'll show you how it actually is done in a very short moment. And besides the things I mentioned earlier, you can also other data can also be synced in there, so comments, attachments, work logs across both instances. So whatever is happening on one side of the picture automatically is moved to the other side. So the considerations we showed earlier, the careful planning, is still obviously is useful to plan, but it doesn't need to be as thorough anymore if you're using backbone, because sync enables changes to be reflected on DC and cloud. And the hybrid model can work rather smoothly, because users can keep working in one instance in one system. With that, before I hand it over to Matse, just one poll to see everyone is still awake. What's the migration strategy? Because you are planning to use or already using, perhaps, now that we have delved a little bit deeper into it, because I saw that a lot of people have actually run their migration or they're already planning. So it'd be interesting to see if you're using the start fresh one, if you're lift and shift, optimize and shift, phase migration. If something there's something that I missed out on, there's migration path that we don't know about, perhaps, or we just forgot about, then just add it in the chat as well. Would be interesting to know about it. Right. Let's see. I guess, Matsu, you can share the results. Ready? Yeah, a lot of you are using five optimize and shift, 71% of you, I guess. And there's some of them are using phase migration or planning to use phase migration. That's pretty cool. And hopefully you will learn something in the slides that follow. And one of you is also looking to use start fresh. So that's interesting to know. Thank you for sharing. And then with that, wait, let me move to the next slide. Yeah, so we already touched assess and plan. Now I will hand it over for prep, test, and migrate parts of it to Matse, who will guide you through it. Matse, you want to take over?
Yes, I'm in the mode to just select the right screen, but yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Yep, you got it.
Cool, perfect. So, how to migrate with a phased migration there now? The next slides, I'll actually want to talk about what does this migration, like such a phased migration, how would it actually look like? And of course, before like this actual to-dos, where we are looking quite practically at how the sync, how the migration would be done. First of all, you basically plan your phases. You kind of group your projects a bit together. So how does it make sense to like which projects do you want to migrate over one after the other? Or probably you would like kind of group some projects together. So it's not one project after another, but rather a couple of, but that depends a bit more on how your projects are structured. I would recommend to actually migrate projects more based on teams so that people are like mainly then also being migrated over as you talk about it. But how does that look like? So in general, for migrating in phases from data center to cloud, we recommend you basically start with freezing the project on data center for now. So only this project, make sure no changes will be happening while we perform this migration. Perform the actual migration with the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. Inform the users that migration has happened, and then as a bonus, keep them in sync afterwards. So let's have a look at how would that look like. Freezing the project, like here's a sample Jira project. I assume at least all the admins in here know about that there are permission schemes inside Jira. So actually, in order to freeze a project, you could just create a new permission scheme. Make sure that basically no one gets any permissions, maybe besides your admins and besides Backbone, because you would later want to still allow Backbone to synchronize data. So Backbone would need still permissions here. But then you could like create a new permission scheme and assign this to the current project. So you're making sure no one touches this project. After that's frozen, you've ensured no one is working with that, then up to the actual migration. Like there are different ways. We already gave it away that we recommend the JCMA as well, but you could also use a CSV import to the other side, but the problem is it doesn't migrate the project configuration, so you would need to redo everything on the other side, which is obviously not ideal for phased migration here. A site import is also not really an option since it replaces the whole site on the other side. But the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant basically copies over your whole project, your whole schemes which you're using, all the necessary data about the project. For the phased migration, you could also use other like migration apps which take that over. That's exchangeable, I would say here. But I will go on with it. Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. Give you a brief insight here. I don't want to explain the cloud migration assistant now in full detail, but give you an impression how that looks like. Every Jira Data Center has a cloud migration assistant installed by default, or if not, you can just get it from the marketplace for free. Make sure it's updated to the latest version, and then you can create a migration. Creating migration has several steps involved. First of all, it starts with like, oh, which Jira Cloud instance you obviously want to migrate this project to. I would also recommend like the name of your migration. Maybe not only name it webinar sample project as I did, but make meaningful names to what this phase means. So you could say phase 1 and include the project keys directly here, or maybe you have a corresponding Confluence page where you document more details about your phases. Make sure it has a meaningful name. And then you actually select which projects would you like to migrate, what data of them should be moved over. You would also go ahead and select which users and groups. I would, in general, recommend to migrate users separately and more keeping the users here really minimum to a minimum, because like your roles and your whole group setup is probably what you want to migrate separately anyways. Once you've selected all the data, you check it for errors, you review if everything is selected and is the case as it should be, and run it. And when you run it, it sees some progress screens and see, okay, here my groups and users have already been completed, but the sample project is right now still exporting. In the end, hopefully you get a screen like this and end up with your project on the other side in the cloud. So that's the rough run through of a migration with the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. You could say now it's over, but no, it's not, because our DC project is still frozen. And like you would probably also want to send out some communication later to your users. And in order to start with the communication, it's good on the one hand side to also consider like now using your preferred like internal messengers like Slack, Teams, or whatever, updates via email to say, hey, this project has been moved over. But also everyone who's still working inside Jira Data Center still sees your project and thinks, oh, okay, so I can still interact with this project. They might realize, I can't modify it for some reason, but they might wonder, is that still the up-to-date data? What's happening? And so wouldn't it be good if you have a banner here which directly informs the user in the context that this project has been migrated, and not like, not that they need to remember this email which was sent 2 weeks ago maybe, and that the project is still there. So in that case, a banner like that would be good on the project, would also be good maybe directly on the issues. And we came up with a little article how you could configure such a project banner. That's in our help docs. I think I didn't copy the link right now, but we can still deliver that later to you. Configuring the project banner is basically using Jira's announcement banner, which is shown in every Jira throughout the whole Jira project, Jira application actually, but then he uses JavaScript and HTML to only show it on certain pages. And we came up with a sample, which you can, of course, adjust to your instance and adjust to your needs. Basically, you would need to enter your project keys inside the code here, and it shows the banner in the corresponding project with this key. And then in the end, you have your banner, and it adapts with every project which you have there, and you can directly navigate still to your cloud instance directly where it is. Now you have a project in the cloud, and you have a project on data center which says, oh, it's not the current anymore, please go to cloud. But you might still have a lot of reports in your data center instance which shows, okay, these are the open issues, or like on a higher level, maybe on a reporting level, you'd like to still get the data from the other side to have one picture about your whole Jira infrastructure. So in that case, that's where our app backbone comes into play. Like you can keep the issues in the sync afterwards, right? So in order to keep them in sync, we would now like set up a synchronization so that all the data which is entered new into the project on the cloud side will just be reflected to the data center side. So on data center, there's still the up-to-date data. if people are depending on updates from your team, from your project, you could go ahead. So for Backbone, you can set up a synchronization between two projects. You have to enter the different, like your Jira URL, your Cloud URL, the connection data, how Backbone can connect to them, and then you can actually select to synchronize the two projects. Once you did that, you would select also, which fields am I really interested in, which issue types. And since now here we had a one-to-one copy with a cloud migration assistant, we would really use of course, a bug is a bug, an epic is an epic. It's all the same. If you're looking at this optimize and shift, which Umar talked earlier about, and you actually have different configuration on both sides, you could still use Backbone now in this case, to map different types to each other. So it doesn't need to be the same, of course, in this scenario of phased migration, it actually is the same. Same issue types, same is true for the fields. We mapped maybe all the fields, maybe just a selection of fields, the important ones. That's a bit up to your choice and which data you really need on the data center side. And then as well, the workflow mappings, coming back here, it looks the same again. Back to the optimize and shift, you could have different workflows already in the cloud, but the old workflow still in data center and also still have the mapping in between both of them. And comments and the same as attachments would also be, of course, possible with that. I think we also have even if you have work logs, you could go ahead and also synchronize work logs as well. That's all possible. And then important step in the end before you actually start the synchronization is that you pair the issues. So you want to make sure that Backbone knows about there are existing issues on the data center side and on the cloud side, which it needs to synchronize. So you automatically pair it, and then Backbone knows about the issues. In this case, it were 23 issues which were now synced successfully. So as a summary here, basically it's always then for every phase the same steps. Freeze the project, make sure no one still edits the data center project, migrate it to the cloud migration assistant, then inform your users via your usual channels, but also inside Jira. And then in the end, keep them in sync if you like to make that transition easier and have the data everywhere available. Yeah, and then you're basically ready for the launch. I think basically in a phased migration, that picture might not be 100% correct because ready for the launch means already ready for the prep test migration of the next phase. So basically it's iterating through the last phases, that at least on the migration and launch phase again and again. It's always a launch for some new projects, but that's, I think, quite obvious about that. I think Uwe, back to you for finishing it off. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, so essentially what this means is what Mats mentioned. The main benefits of using Backbone for phase migration allows you the flexibility and customization in your migration strategy. Also allows gathering of iterative feedback, so gives you opportunity to incrementally improve after each phase. And obviously then it reduces the chances and risk of data loss and a significant hiccup during the migration. Also reduces single downtimes because you basically are running two systems in parallel, and you're doing your migration on a more project-based approach, and users can be onboarded more gradually, giving them more time to get used to the new system or maybe continue working in the old one. Next slide, maybe, Matsu. Thank you very much. So in case you are interested in learning more about Backbone, we'll send you the recording, as I said earlier, and also some of the links, but you can also scan this QR code. Backbone is available on the Atlassian marketplace for 30 days for free. And then afterwards, you can buy your license. And then in case you have questions, then I'd like to open the floor for some Q&A. We'll wait if somebody adds something in the chat. And thank you, Matze, for adding some links already. We've also added a link to for booking a demo in case you are you want to discuss some of your needs personally. Some of the we can go through some questions that usually are frequently asked, Matze. So with Backbone, can you what does it sync? For example, can you sync pick and choose just work items, or is it also possible to pick and choose other fields or comments and attachments?
Yeah, that's a bit like in the migration, like in the Backbone UI, there you have different possibilities of like really choosing exactly what you want to synchronize. So for the phased migration, as I said before, like you would probably really map it one-to-one back. But if you're doing optimize and shift and actually using Backbone as the migration tool, you probably don't want to have the same on both sides. So you would really configure more transformations to say, yeah, maybe I don't have the users from my data center instance, all of them in the cloud. So I would rather transform that information from the user field to still use that information and maintain it, but present it in another way in the cloud, I guess, either select fields or text fields or like so different ways of doing that.
Right. Another question that we get very often is the synchronization real time, or it has to be scheduled or on demand? Can that be configured?
I think I would answer probably like it's as real time as it can be. Like in cloud, basically on every change when we like get an event from Atlassian and then we sync that back to the data center. Of course, if they are like bulk changes and like thousands of work items updated, then it's more, it takes some time, but it's more within minutes or within seconds, depending on your total volume of things.
Okay. Yeah, maybe one more question before we end it. And in case you guys have questions in the audience, and just feel free to add it in the chat. Is there a limit to numbers of issues or work items or projects that a person or a team can sync after they've installed Backbone?
There is no limit. The main limit is like what I said in speed-wise, like we need to limit the traffic a bit because otherwise there are some rate limits on Atlassian infrastructure, like to protect and keep it stable, of course. And that's also why like when we have a lot of work items like for migration, then for example it like keeps like pushing all the updates into a queue, and then we process the queue. So it might take a bit longer for bigger migrations, but it actually still will work eventually.
Nice. So Julia Fodden, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. She's added a question. Matze, JCMA, does JCMA migrate all custom field statuses from DC to cloud, or only those relevant in the projects being migrated?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure on the question, but my understanding of it is actually just the ones which are relevant. So it's not like the everything right now. You're selecting the different projects, and so it's always like selecting everything based on this selection. So if the fields are used in a project, then it's actually migrating it over. If like the workflow uses 5 statuses out of your 20, it will migrate the 5 over, but not the other ones. So.
But I guess that's where Backbone can help. Like you can actually then pick and choose the ones you want to migrate, and you can migrate all of them as well if you want. But that's kind of the difference we wanted to highlight in this webinar. Padmini also added a question: are reports and metrics retained after migration?
I think actually reports and metrics probably depends a bit like on how you would define the reports. Like one thing what I talked about was, or what we talked together about was like, when you already have existing reports, dashboards for reporting or so, which you are using on data center, if you have them And while you do this phased migration, you still get all the data back from cloud to data center. And so all the existing reports can still run and show all the data that you want to see. Then you actually want to migrate these reports to the cloud. Then it's getting more a bit tricky about the migrating the dashboards. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can also migrate dashboards with the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. But I can double check that, and we can also convey that information with a summary email.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another more general question, I guess, about the merits of cloud versus DC. So, what are the actual financial benefits when compared to DC versus cloud by Piyush? What are the criteria to check this?
That's probably a bit like also a question. Like I remember some slides in the past from Atlassian, like which showed, okay, the cloud on DC, the cost on cloud seems to be higher on DC if you just look at the licensing. But if you look at like your server hosting costs, your Jira administration costs for performing upgrades, and like additional factors like that, then that's what Atlassian likes to claim, to say, hey, then the cost is actually like lower on cloud. To be honest, I think that's basically a calculation everyone needs to make by themselves too. But to not forget about these other factors, to say, oh yes, we need to pay some admin who updates twice a year or however often you update your Jira, needs to test the updates, needs to run that. That's actually what is easier on cloud, I would say. Like maybe you would also say it's more a bit like surprisingly how you get the updates. This is another topic, not related to the costs, but also, yeah, also interesting. Yeah.
But I guess this was more relevant when it was server versus DC or cloud. But now you actually don't have much of a choice, right? Yeah, unless you want to switch away from Atlassian.